Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, it is I am the one and only Tiana here once again, and I am back for the likes of the Maxi Toys videos. And ladies and gentlemen, welcome back for some more of Let's Play of Princess Peach Showtime for the Nintendo Switch. So, last time, we've essentially did manage to fully complete everything for the sake of Floor 5. Like, for instance, we did somehow manage to still continue finding some more ninja people, in addition to the forms of one additional sparkle gem somewhere during the forms within the actual Figure Skater Peach second act, which is of course a parade on ice. So naturally speaking though, we are fully completed everything in Floor 5 now. So this means we've only got one floor left, and that's what appears to be the basement floor. So today for this video, speaking of which, is about the fact that we are still continue experiencing the forms of the hide and seek challenges, and except this time we are now going to be focusing on the basement floor now. Now, originally though, I was expecting to try to able to actually go for the entire floor with the forms of a singular part of this video, but actually as it turns out is about the fact that I've actually decided able to actually go into two different parts for the sake of the forms of the basement floor, because no matter what though, it's about the fact that certain stages are going to be quite lengthy as it is, specifically not only for the sake of the forms of Patisserie Peach, but as well as the forms of Detective Peach as well, because obviously though it's about the fact that those two stages in the basement floor is going to be super duper lengthy. So because of that, what I'm going to do here is about the fact that I'm actually going to be focusing on 5 stages in between the forms of the actual specific progression of that particular hide and seek challenges for the entire basement floor. So yeah, that's essentially my plan as far as this is concerned. Although relatively speaking though, it's about the fact that we are basically almost done for the sake of the forms of every single aspect of the hide and seek challenges before we move on to the final 2 bits, before we're done with the entire game itself, specifically with the 100% completion. So because of that though, still I'm basically excited about this, especially concerning for the fact that it's gone a long way, especially concerning for the fact that I will say the entire process of this particular uploading schedules for Princess Peach Showtime, I will admit though right away, is actually not too bad I thought I was going to. Whilst unlike the forms of how it does it in Yoshi's Crafted World, my god, is a lot of busy work, ranging from souvenir hunting, in addition to that, certain smiley flowers we still need to obtain, not only for the sake of the fact that we do need to able to actually go back onto that specific level, nor to able to actually get ourselves these smiley flowers to begin with. Like, for instance, if you accidentally missed one of those smiley flowers in one of the levels, then obviously, though, you have to try that particular stage again. It doesn't really matter what levels you go into in Yoshi's Crafted World. Sometimes it can either be super duper short, or sometimes very lengthy, whilst other times, though, you got able to go onto specific, vehicle mechanics. So because of that though, yeah, it's definitely a little bit of a busy work more than anything else, potentially speaking though. Well, usually that's besides the point. So anyways, as you can tell, no matter what though, this is technically not the final time we're going to be able to actually dress up as not only Sword Fighter Peach, if you couldn't tell, but it's also same applies with the other 4 outfits here and there as well. Because, well, relatively speaking though, it's probably best if we're able to save that particular topic, assuming if, of course, we're able to actually make our way towards the very end, not just by the forms of June, but it's also with the forms of the first half of 2024 as a result. So, yeah, relatively speaking though, there's nothing else I can really say about it, apart from the fact that there was one little thing that I suppose I completely forgot to mention about, since in Journey forms have been the 2 days ago actually, and that's what appears to be about the fact that yes indeed, one of those films in particular, called Harry Potter and the Prisoner of the Azkaban, has recently became 20 years old just recently. And while looking back on it though, it's actually very good to me anyway. Although I will say is about the fact that I certainly did enjoy it, especially concerning for the fact that what I found was a little bit fascinating is about the fact that they somehow managed able to fully utilize with the forms of this particular time travel aspect, specifically with all that particular time loop thingy or something like that. Mind you, it's been about quite a few years ago since I actually have last watched the forms of Harry Potter and the Prisoner of the Azkaban. But I will say this right from the start though, is about the fact that I really loved, while looking back on it though, is that I really love the forms of this particular spooky bus sequence, especially concerning for the fact it almost reminds me like the forms of one of those attractions you're able to actually interact with, with specifically with certain theme park rides here and there. Well, mind you, it's hard to explain, but I know for a fact it's been about 2 days ago since I actually have last played this game for sure. And mind you, because of how the fact that I still cannot figure out how to able to deal with this little quick dodge here and there. Well, that's just clearly because no matter what though, I still find this to be a little bit of a finicky way to able to try to dodge his attacks. Although, thankfully though, this will be the final time we can able to deal with this guy, especially concerning for the fact that obviously though, this will be the true definition of the final time to able to actually rescue certain sparklers yet again, except this time about the fact that we are still in the process of, you know, the hide and seek challenges as far as I'm concerned. Thankfully though, unlike in any other stages for that matter, it only contains one ninja to find. So because of that though, thankfully though, the entire length with some exceptions here and there, that basically is going to be a lot more shorter than I was expecting. Well, again, it really depending on the forms of how lengthy certain stages are, to be more specifically with Patisserie Peach, alongside with the forms of Detective Peach here and there as well, but you'll see what I mean, enjoying at some point until next Tuesday perhaps. So, anyways, let's deal with this one last final blow, and exponentially, we are basically done every single aspect when it comes to Sword Fighter Peach, with only one in particular exception to this, and then again, we'll talk more about that if we get towards at the very end of June for some time. So anyways, there's also another thing I want to point out as well, is that for what I've noticed something is about the fact that, actually kind of think about it, tomorrow, not only for the sake of the fact that, well, it will be the 5th year anniversary of the film's release, of The Secret Life of Pets 2, that is going to be celebrating its 5th anniversary tomorrow, but it's also, get this, the Summer Game Fest is about to start until tomorrow. So, relatively speaking though, I'm going to be pretty excited to know of what specific stuff they'll bring us into. So, then again, we'll have to wait and see what happens, enduring at some point until tomorrow. But there's one unfortunate downside to this though, and that's what appears to be about the fact that, sadly to tell you, that there's not going to be any new information upon Kingdom Hearts 4 anytime soon. So because of that though, kind of unfortunate though, but at least on the positive side of things though, that as far as what both Sonic and Amy have both mentioned about this already, that both Sonic Cross Shadow Generations alongside with Dragon Ball Sparking Zero will make its debut for the sake of the forms of trying to mention some more information for the sake of the forms of the Summer Game Fest. So yeah, that should be pretty exciting, especially concerning for the fact that I always attempt to really enjoy the original Sonic Generations for both the Xbox 360/PlayStation 3. I was originally trying to mention about the PC Steam version here and there, but of course I still have not exactly access to, not only for PC, but it's also with Steam version here and there as well, despite the fact that you can able to actually play the game on the go for the Steam Deck, as far as I've definitely heard about it anyway. Well, mind you, I still cannot afford to able to actually get myself the Steam Deck, but that's just mainly because it is still ridiculously pricey as it is. So, oh well, beggars can't be choosers, I guess. So, that's besides the point. So, anyway, so there's also another thing I want to point out as well, is that I've noticed something for the sake of the forms of one of those YouTube channels called Mario Kart Gamer Dude, that he did mention about the forms of how the fact that the reason why that we haven't got any new sequels for the sake of the Mario and Sonic at the Olympic Winter Games specifically, within the forms of in the 2018 version, alongside with the 2022 version of it, is most likely because I did found out is that Sega does not have a Winter Games license anymore. So as a result, it's now being taken over by Ubisoft instead. So that's the reason why that we haven't exactly got the 2018 as well as the 2022 Winter Olympics for Mario and Sonic. So my guess is about the fact that we are basically stuck with only 2 installments of the Winter Olympics series when it comes to Mario and Sonic games. So one for 2010 and then the other one which appears to be in 2014. So aside from that, it's been like, you know, over 10 years since the last entry in terms of the forms of the Mario and Sonic at the Olympic Winter Games kind of games. So yeah, I can totally see why about the fact that we're probably not going to get the new installments for the Mario and Sonic at the Olympic Winter Games series anymore. So because of that though, kind of sucks honestly, but that's besides the point. So anyways though, There's also another thing as one of pointing out, is that apparently though, for I did somehow found out that when it comes to the forms of the Summer Game Fest, as far as I'm aware, the opening show will about to be 2 hours long. So because of that though, I was assuming about the fact that it's going to be roughly about 4 hours long. Well, actually, as it turns out, it's going to be 2 hours long. So as a result, yeah, it's not going to be as gem-packed compared to the forms of how it does on the past years for sure, but I'm still basically excited for it regardless of the forms of the actual specific length to this though, especially after the events of how the fact that you probably already know that obviously E3 is now dead for the sake of time, since in June e-forms have been last year or so. So because of that though, yeah, it's not going to be the same without E3 announcements anymore. So because of that though, I suppose no matter what though, that's as far as I can try to explain about this, I guess. So anyways, and there's also another thing I want to point out as well, is that it looks like we're about to be getting ourselves a new first teaser trailer for the sake of the forms of one of those particular games coming up soon. And that's what appears to be by the forms of, let's just say, a sequel to the forms of Digimon or Demon X Machina kind of game. So as a result, yeah, it looks like we're about to be receiving another game which appears to be based off for the sake of the forms of Demon X Machina, called Demon X Machina Titanic Sitcom or something like that. So yeah, that seems kind of out of nowhere. So again, it's hard for me to explain, because I know for a fact that, like I said before, it's been about 2 days ago since I actually have last played this game for sure. And what I've noticed something about this as well, I guess, is about the fact that it seems to me more specifically that so far, for the sake of the forms of after we somehow managed to went into May already, that it feels like we have not received any of those Sonic Centrals just yet. My guess is about the fact that they'll try to save that particular next new Sonic Central Direct at some point in this coming month, or specifically since we're now in June already. So it makes sense about the fact that it's probably for the better. They'll try to able to save some more topics for the sake of Sonic news content during at some point by the end of June, specifically on the 23rd of June. So it'll make sense for that specific context. So because obviously though, unlike in 2021, they did somehow manage able to did the Sonic Central to begin with, or in some cases firstly introduced Sonic Central Direct, since in it did somehow firstly introduced since in 2021, specifically on the 25th of May, and then later on in 2022 that we somehow get ourselves Sonic Central during at some point in the 6th of June, and somehow in last year that we somehow received one thanks to the forms of celebrating the forms of the 32nd anniversary of the Sonic the Hedgehog franchise during the forms of in the 23rd of June in 2023. So, and kind of think about it, it did came out around exactly the same time as in when the forms of that particular DLC expansion of Sonic Origins Plus did somehow came out, not only for the sake of the forms of DLC, but as well as the forms of the physical format as well. So because of that though, yeah, it seems kind of a cool coincidence anyway. So I'm guessing it might as well able to do that again, for the sake of the forms of this year for the likes of in June. But then again, we'll have to wait and see what happens in due time though, especially concerning for the fact that obviously though, that tomorrow is going to be a pretty exciting experience, despite the fact that as I said before, it won't be the same as the forms of what we're used to, since back in the day when E3 was still alive, or in some cases still like relative at that time. So yeah, relatively speaking, I was about the fact it's been like, you know, almost 3 years ago since we've last had something relates to E3, since in E3 2021, even though despite the fact that it does manage to take place in online as opposed to the forms of reality world. So, and it's been like almost 5 years ago since in E3 2019 about the fact that you can able to actually check out the forms of specific playable demos for certain games, but it's also what I found a little bit fascinating while looking back on the past E3s, and that's what appears to be about the fact I really love the actual booths they somehow managed able to bring us into for specific games. Specifically, I remember back in 2017, they did somehow manage able to get ourselves a massive booth for able to actually try the playable demo for Super Mario Odyssey, but that was back in 2017, which has been like almost 7 years ago or anything else like that. So because of that though, yeah, I do remember the good old times when it comes to likely looking back on journey forms of a bunch of E3 stuff as far as I'm aware. So yeah, you probably get the gist of it. So anyway, oh, there's also another thing I want to point out as well, is that it looks like no matter what though, is about the fact that the actual Play Nintendo tour is going to be on its way, to be more specifically, until next week. So because of that though, like usually relatively speaking though, is about the fact that during the informs have been this summer, Nintendo is bringing smiles to cities across the nation alongside with Mario, Princess Peach, Donkey Kong, Pikachu, and more with the Play Nintendo tour, and is about to start and during at some point, as I said before, at some point in next week. To be more specifically, it's about to start until June 13th all the way up to the 2nd of September. So basically though, Nintendo invites kids and their parents to explore the endless adventure and fun of Nintendo and the Nintendo Switch system with various stops across the nation. So yeah, as a result, they did somehow mention about the forms of some bunch of games you can able to try out during the forms of that particular Play Nintendo tour, and those games in questioning are, let's just say, they include some games have already been came out, like for instance with Princess Peach Showtime, alongside with the forms of Mario vs. Donkey Kong, and in addition to that, there's also Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, alongside with the Booster Calls Pass DLC, in addition to that, Super Mario Bros. Wonder. But then out of nowhere, they're about to also include 2 games that have not been released yet, which I think is actually pretty cool. And 2 games in questioning, there are Luigi's Mansion 2 HD, and the other one which appears to be Nintendo World Championships NES Edition. So because of that though, yeah, that should be pretty exciting stuff, especially concerning for the fact that we might able to actually just to see some more gameplay footage for not only for the likes of Luigi's Mansion 2 HD, but it's also about the forms of Nintendo World Championships NES Edition and much, much more. So, yeah, and I'm really hoping about the fact that we might able to actually hear about the forms of that potential Nintendo Direct at some point soon, especially concerning for the fact that, after all, we're still on June after all. So, again, we'll have to wait and see what happens in due time though, especially concerning for the fact that I'm still basically excited to know of the last batch of Nintendo Switch games will be revealed just before when Nintendo is about to be moving on onto the Switch successor, during at some point in either by the end of this year, or to be more specifically in the beginning of 2025, for exponentially trying to try to sort things out with this financial year results. So, but then again, we'll have to wait and see what happens. So, anyways though, there's also another thing I want to point out as well. Yes, indeed, it's about the fact that CapKing74 has also been returned back onto uploading stuff for a while also, and no matter what though, the biggest difference is this time around though, is that he did somehow suffer the forms of some bad microphone issues recently, but aside from all that stuff though, it is great to be back, Stuart, or in some cases, it's great to be back, CapKing74, to able to actually continue playing through Kirby Squeak Squad, or Kirby Mouse Attack, for those of you who lived in the European countries, as far as I'm aware. So, yeah, relatively speaking, I was about the fact that, then again, it's nice to know about the fact he's glad to be back on to playing certain Kirby games, since Kirby's Epic Yarn / Kirby's Extra Epic Yarn for the 3DS, well, mind you about the fact that he only focused on one version in particular, that's what appears to be the Wii version, because obviously, though, about the fact you can see the gameplay just fine, whilst compared to the forms of how it does it on the 3DS, I will admit it though right away, that I still haven't exactly fully 100% everything on the 3DS version just yet. Well, this is clearly because no matter what though, I feel like that devilish mode is really dang tough. At least if you're trying to go for 100% completion, like if you're trying to go after not only certain collectibles, but it's also with the forms of some other stuff here and there as well. Maybe I will try to do that at some point if I got some spare time, if I decided able to take a break on playing through this for a while, well, mind you about the fact that maybe it's possible about the fact that until next week, perhaps, that I've decided able to actually take a break on playing this game if we somehow manage to fully complete it, the hide and seek challenges, as a matter of fact. So because of that though, again, we'll have to wait and see what happens in due time. So yeah, we'll have to wait and see. So now, in terms of the forms of some specific outfits that we somehow managed able to come across into, that, as you can tell, that is the true definition of the final time that we somehow managed able to became Ninja Peach, alongside with the forms of Patisserie Peach coming up. And in addition to that though, I think that could be also applied to the forms of well, let's just say Figure Skater Peach, perhaps. Which, if that seems to be the case, well, that seems definitely true. So anyway, so speaking of Figure Skater Peach though, this is going to be the final time we're going to be playing as Figure Skater Peach before we move on to Patisserie Peach during at some points coming up. So because of that though, again, we only have to find one of those ninja people, at least in every single portions throughout. So either way though, we can able to expect to know what this is going. So anyway, there's also another thing I want to point out as well, I guess, is about the fact that I get this strong sense of feeling about the fact that it looks like out of nowhere that one of those games in questioning, which appears to be Concord, basically though, for whatever reason, the actual dislike aspect ratio has gone ridiculously higher compared to what I was expecting, because it looks like no matter what though, there's a massive backlash hits Sony's big 2024 release. So yeah, I was not expecting for that particular dislike aspect ratio did somehow manage able to get a bunch of them, at least ever since Enduring Forms have been a couple of weeks ago for the likes of ever since in that particular, well, Mufasa the Lion King live action movie did somehow already address with that particular dislike aspect ratio, which, mind you, I did somehow dislike that particular teaser trailer to begin with, because let's face it though, I am so sick of and tired of the forms of those Disney live action movies at this point. Not only because they're running out of ideas, but it's also about the fact that it looks like ever since Enduring Forms of in the Little Mermaid live action movie that it did somehow came out since in about a year ago, that seems about the fact that it seems like the actual box office earnings is actually a bit of a struggle at some form or another. So yeah, that's besides the point, and trust me, what I'm saying this is about the fact I'm still basically going to be hyped about when it comes to able to actually go ahead and see Sonic the Hedgehog 3, alongside with the forms of how in fact I can usually watch that film, alongside with the forms of Sonic and Amy, and maybe with the forms of Shadow himself as well, just because, you know, this is the year of Shadow after all, with all that Fearless and everything. So, and I'm afraid to tell you for this point, guys, that's as far as I can try and able to explain about the forms of today's topic at this point. I mean, I would have liked able to explain about the forms of other stuff worth noting for, specifically with the forms of this upcoming event until likely until tomorrow, like for instance with the Summer Game Fest and everything. But let's just say it's probably best if we let both Sonic and Amy, we'll both mention more about that during at some point until tomorrow. So yeah, we'll let them say that during at some point. So, but anyways, here we go now onto this particular chase sequence once again. So hopefully we should be able to try to find one of those ninja people somewhere around here. But then again though, you have to pay attention to the forms of those specific white outlines of those specific edges. So just in case, you can be able to actually definitely try to find one of those ninja people around here somewhere. And in fact, no matter what though, he's actually over here. And we somehow found him. And I get the horrible feeling that we somehow gonna get hit. So, yep, there goes that. But that's okay though, because obviously though it's about the fact that luckily though we don't have to go all the way back to the beginning portion of the level again. So just in case, we can able to actually get ourselves a nice little freebie generous checkpoint right here. So just in case, we can able to continue where we left off. And not to mention though is about the fact that I'm pretty sure that we've already managed to done quite enough when it comes to able to grinding as many of those coins as possible, because relatively speaking though is about the fact that we're still able to actually spend on such an amount of coins, so that just in case we can able to actually go ahead and buy the last few items here and there, to be more specifically based off from specific outfits for Peach, alongside with the forms of one of those colors for one of those ribbons for Stella. So, but then again, we'll save that particular topic and during at some point by the end of this month in particular, when it comes to June itself. So, anyways, let's go and deal with this little quick time event around here, so just in case we don't able to mess this up. And there we go, that pretty much takes care of every single aspect. Well, when it comes to the forms of Power Factor, we've already done every single aspect when it comes to Ninja Peach, but as far as Figure Skater Peach, as far as I'm concerned, well, we have basically done every single aspect for Figure Skater Peach. So, yeah, and I believe we've only got about 6 more plays left for the majority of the basement floor as it is. So relatively speaking, like I said before, we'll basically have to stick around with the forms of 5 plays for now on, for the sake of the forms of today's uploading schedule, and we'll do the other 5 during at some point until next Tuesday perhaps. And exponentially, hopefully around that time, that may be that Nintendo might able to actually announce with the forms of the actual general Nintendo Direct for that particular week coming up or something like that. Again, we'll have to wait and see what happens during at some point, but that's besides the point. So, anyways though, so let's go ahead and move on now on to Patisserie Peach for the final time, and so much so about the fact that we are once again going to be able to decorate the entire cakes as much as we could. So potentially speaking, it's about the fact that this will be the final time to able to actually deal with a lot of like mini-game kind of challenges, I guess. So either way though, so yeah, then again though, I do apologize about the fact that my commentary is a little bit slightly awkward again, but that's just clearly because, again, if I was trying to say something out of it, sometimes though it's about the fact that I've almost gonna get croaky throat all of a sudden. So because of that though, again, I will admit it though, I do apologize for this point folks. And hopefully by that time until next week or so, basically though, I might as well feel a lot more better. In fact, thankfully though, one of those ninjas is actually at the very beginning of the stage, luckily enough. Whilst whenever we get into the forms of some later plays, as far as I'm aware, some of them can be pretty well hidden, whilst there are other times though is about the fact that it can be easily be missable. So, but even then though, again, I will definitely gonna have to make sure I don't miss anything. So because of that though, and it's also worth noting for is about the fact that once we go back onto Cowgirl Peach again, during at some point until next Tuesday, then in addition about the fact that just trying to actually find one of those ninja people along the way, but it's also about the fact that yes indeed, I did miss out on not 1, but 2 sparkle gems I do need to get during at some point if we go back onto Cowgirl Peach for sure. So but don't worry, it will make it happen. So either way though, let's just go ahead and trying to be fast at this point, so just in case we don't able to mess this up, because if we do somehow mess this up beyond belief, then obviously though we're probably not going to get the already collected sparkle gems, which honestly though it really doesn't matter too much about it, especially concerning for the fact that, again, like I said before, if you're trying to keep on collecting these already collected sparkle gems, you get additional coins if you decide able to actually go after, or in some cases if you really want to buy some expensive items for certain shops exponentially. So, but yeah, nothing else I can really say about it. I mean, it's just about the fact that hopefully by that time, until at some point in the next couple of days or so, that I am also able to actually be back on playing Sonic Dash for a while. So just in case I can able to actually unlock not only one character, but a whole bunch of characters later on. Likely also for the sake of the forms of Burning Blades eventually at some point, because I was seriously going to be able to be excited about just trying to able to actually unlock Burning Blaze once that particular event is going to be coming up, for likely for the sake of the forms of probably until next week or so. Well, then again, we'll have to wait and see what happens. So, and as far as I'm aware, is about the fact that it looks like no matter what though, in regards to the forms of Mario Kart Tour in mind, that thankfully though, I'm actually going to be ignoring one of those event reruns, which appears to be by the forms of another one of those Team Rally events. So, it's more specifically, is that we're going back onto Mario vs. Luigi 2023 edition. So, it looks like no matter what though, I was lucky enough about the fact that I'm not going to go for that particular Team Rally system again. So, Whew, thank heavens for that, because let me tell you something, I'm still not a big fan of the forms of the Team Rally system, for the sake of Mario Kart Tour anyway, because it's all really down to the forms of some really bad RMG, and not to mention though is about the fact that I'm just not a big fan of that particular concept, which as a result, it is interesting for sure, at first glance, back in journey forms of at some point in 2020, but every once in a while though, I just do not like it right now, especially concerning for a fact I'm just seriously not a big fan of that particular convoluted stuff here and there. Oh yeah, there's something worth noting for actually, is about the fact that we've only got about exactly 3 weeks left now until specifically Luigi's Mansion 2 HD for the Nintendo Switch is almost going to be around the corner. And that could be also applies to the forms of, well, let's just say, we've only got about exactly 19 days to go until Super Monkey Ball Banana Rumble for the Nintendo Switch will be releasing. So because of that though, still I'm basically excited to able to check out those 2 upcoming Nintendo Switch titles here and there. So yeah, I seriously just cannot wait to know of how these games actually turns out to be. Well, mind you, I'm not exactly sure how the reviews is actually going to turn out to be. Well, I'm sure we'll find out more about it during at some point by the end of this month for the sake of June, before we move on to July. So, anyways, it is also worth noting for as well is about the fact that it looks like we've only got about 8 more days to go now until Inside Out 2 is going to be releasing on the cinemas. So, but then again though, unfortunately though, there is no way we can able to actually see the film on day 1 sadly. Well, that's just clearly because we've got a lot of things to take care of. So, relatively speaking, I was about the fact that hopefully we will see that particular film at some point. But please, no spoilers for us, please, because I was seriously need able to see that film so badly. And maybe potentially speaking of, I'm also able to actually decide able to go ahead and rewatch the first Inside Out film, believe it or not, just before we dive right into Inside Out 2, because it'll make sense to able to actually get ourselves a sense of context of how the actual plot represented for. So, but yeah, that's as far as I can say about the forms of today's topic at this point, guys. I mean, sure enough though, until next week, we will definitely going to be mentioning about the forms of a lot of stuff here and there, especially concerning for the fact that obviously, like I said before, that the Summer Game Fest is just around the corner. In fact, let me know in the comments down below for the question of the day. Are you guys excited able to actually watch the rest of the forms of the Summer Game Fest until tomorrow? Because I'd like to hear your thoughts in the comment section down below. Because for me though, I'm basically excited for 2 games specifically when it comes to both Dragon Ball Sparking Zero and as well as from that, Sonic Cross Shadow Generations, and maybe some unexpected announcements here and there too. But then again, we'll have to wait and see what happens during at some point until next week perhaps. And I suppose no matter what though, we've only got about 3 more days to go until the Xbox Game Showcase Direct is about to be coming up at some point as well. So yeah, that will be a double the excitement for, at least for right now anyway. So because of that though, also, I just realized about something is about the fact that I'm pretty sure about the fact that we've only got about a couple of weeks left now until the Paris 2024 Summer Olympics is almost going to be approaching at some point. So, yeah, that should be pretty exciting as well, especially concerning for the fact that I'm still basically excited able to check out the forms of breaking event, which is to be more specifically, break dancing is going to be involved. So, yeah, that should be pretty exciting. So, anyways folks, so that pretty much takes care of every single aspect in regards to the forms of Patisserie Peach. So, naturally speaking though, we're now on to the halfway point in terms of the basement floor in regards to the forms of the fully 100% completion. So because of that though, yeah, and as I said before, we'll save the forms of the second half in terms of the forms of the basement floor until specifically until next Tuesday, because it looks like no matter what though, yeah, we are basically almost done with the forms of every single aspect in regards to the forms of the hide and seek challenges. So yeah, we are definitely getting pretty close for this point folks, especially concerning for the fact that again, I was expecting to try to able to end this entire Let's Play off during at some point in the midway portion of June, but I've decided able to actually just to go ahead and say this right now, we'll pretty much guarantee we can able to actually finish up everything in this whole entire game during at some point by the end of June for some time. So anyways, let's go and quickly change the forms of a different dress for Peach alongside with a different color scheme for Stella quickly. because, you know, just showing us some different variety when it comes to patterns and colors alike. So with that being said, folks, is that we get endings off this point right here. So join us next time for more of Let's Play of Princess Peach Showtime. Is that we're about to conclude everything for the hide and seek challenges by going into the rest of the remainings of the basement floor. So I'll see you guys until next Tuesday. Later, fellas.